Hello, everyone, and welcome back to segment 2. So during this segment, we are going to take a look at lesson D, the reading practice, which you can find on page 116 and 117. So before we begin, let me ask you a question to think about. Have you ever experienced any kind of emergency in your life or in your family's life? Have you ever experienced any kind of dangerous situation, or even in your neighborhood or in your home country? So think about this question, because our reading topic today relates to emergencies and how people come together and help each other. We could also say that these days we are in a global emergency. And how do you think that people are helping each other or working together, supporting one another? So have you made any observations about this? Okay, now, before we look at this reading topic together, you can see that the title is Home is More Than a Building. So do you have any guesses or predictions what this topic might be about? I hope that you have never experienced what this reading is about, but if you have, I hope that you also received help, as we will see happened in this story. So before we look at the reading, let's take a look very quickly on the next page, 117. And we want to take a moment to remind ourselves, review some of the vocabulary. So in the PowerPoint presentation that I gave last week, or in the previous week's video instructions for Unit 9, I went over some new vocabulary, and I challenged you by not giving exact definitions, but I asked you to take a guess based on the examples that I gave. So on page 117, let's take a moment to review. And we see some vocabulary here. So before we check it, let's look at these words again and see if the meaning comes back to your memory. So we have support, evacuate, gathering, grabbed, destroyed, generous, strangers, and message. Okay. So you can see that we are going to have some fill in the blank exercises after we read the story. Now, we talked about how reading the questions is a good strategy, a good reading strategy before you read. We want to get some reading goals. So let's read these together on page 117. I'm looking at exercise 3. So number 1, what is the main idea of this news article? Okay, they have given us a clue. It is a news article. So maybe it's from a newspaper or magazine, maybe an online news source. Okay, and then underline the details that support your answer. Number 2, why did Pedro and Maria move to her sister's home? Okay, so we have a clue here. 2 people, Pedro and Maria. Pedro is the Spanish form of Peter. Okay, number 3, Name 3 things that changed Pedro and Maria's life. So we're looking for 3 things or 3 events that will happen. Number 4, who were the people that helped Pedro and Maria rebuild their lives? Okay, we have the word with re. Re means again, rebuild. So what's your guess? Rebuild their lives. Something bad happened, probably. Number 5 question. In the second paragraph, what does the word evacuate mean? Okay, we have this also as a vocab word. So what does evacuate mean? And the 6th question, how were Maria and Pedro able to overcome this difficult time? We have another clue here. Difficult. Positive, negative. So what's your guess? What do you think this story will be about? And is it something positive or negative? So also, I will point out to you in the questions, we have question words, what, why, who, how, and then 5 in the middle, what. So remember, we have talked about these that are information questions, meaning we need more information, more details. Okay? Now, at this time, I would like for you to go back to page 116. And I want you to pause the video at this time. And I want you to give yourself a time limit. Okay, so time yourself, maybe use your phone. Try to take 1 or 2 minutes maximum. I'll be generous. Give yourself 2 minutes. 2 minutes. And I want you to skim this text. Okay? Notice the title. How many paragraphs are here? Do you see any numbers, such as dates or statistics? Okay? Where is it happening? You may notice here Claypool, AZ. AZ stands for, if you know the state's abbreviations, Arizona. Arizona. Okay, so also, do you see any people's names besides Pedro and Maria? Any other people mentioned here? So pause at this time and skim. Don't read everything word for word. Quickly look across and down. Good luck. Okay, now at this time, I would like for you to listen. So I'm going to let you hear one time the cue reader. I'm going to play for you one time at least. And I want you to focus on finding the vocabulary. Okay? So we are looking for support, evacuate, gathering, destroyed, generous, strangers, message, and so on. So as you see or hear the word, circle it. Circle it. If you don't understand something, put a question mark. If you think it's an important idea, underline it or circle it. Okay? Let's begin, and good luck.
Page 116, Exercise 2. Home is more than a building. A few months ago, Pedro Ramirez, 45, lost his job in a grocery store. To pay the bills, he got a part-time job at night. Several days later, Pedro's wife, Luisa, gave him a big surprise. She was pregnant with their third child. Pedro was happy, but worried. How am I going to support another child without a full-time job? He wondered. That evening, Pedro and Luisa got some more news. A fire was coming near their home. By the next morning, the fire was very close. The police ordered every family in the neighborhood to evacuate. The Ramirez family moved quickly. While Pedro was gathering their legal documents, Luisa grabbed the family photographs, and the children put their pets, a cat and a bird, in the family's van. Then the family drove to the home of Luisa's sister, 1 hour away. About 24 hours later, Pedro and Luisa got very bad news. The fire destroyed their home. They lost almost everything. With no home, only part-time work, and a baby coming, Pedro was even more worried about the future. For the next 11 months, the Ramirez family stayed with Luisa's sister while workers were rebuilding their home. Many generous people helped them during that difficult time. Friends took them shopping for clothes. Strangers left gifts at their door. A group of children collected $500 to buy bicycles for the Ramirez children. Because of all the help from friends and neighbors, the Ramirez family was able to rebuild their lives. 2 months after the fire, Luisa mailed out holiday cards with this message: "Home is more than a building. Home is wherever there is love."
Okay. What's your opinion about this news story? Does it strike a chord with you? That's a idiomatic expression. Does it strike a chord? Meaning, does it give you some feeling or impression? So, what do you think? Is this a positive or negative news story? Or both? Maybe there's good and bad. Did you catch any vocabulary in the articles? Okay, and let me point your attention to here. We're going to practice finding some context clues. So I will guide you with a couple exercises to take a guess. Okay, and I put here positive or negative. So we'll take one paragraph as an example to think about catching the meaning of this paragraph. What's the main idea of the whole story? What do you think? Where do we find the main idea? Is it at the beginning of the story or at the end? And then finally, what are 1 or 2 details that really stand out to you? What makes an impression on you? Okay, and finally, what's your opinion? So, are you ready? Let's talk about some of these answers. Now, if you would like, before we go over these answers, please pause again and read this article to yourself. Okay? So, starting with exercise 3, after you read, number 1, what do you think is the main idea of this article? Did you underline anything that helped you think about the main idea of the whole story? Okay, now if we take a few clues and we notice the title of this article, Home is More Than a Building. Okay, if we also look at the end of this article, last paragraph, the very last sentence, we have a quote. Home is more than a building. Home is wherever there is love. Have you heard the expression, home is where the heart is? This is a common expression, I think, across many cultures. So, do you agree with this idea? Now, would we say that this is the main idea? Okay, I challenge you to find your own words to summarize this article. But underline and think about how do you come to this conclusion, your opinion about the main idea. Okay, so I think that we have basically answered number one. So despite difficulty or hardship, even if we lose our homes, home is wherever we are with the people we love. Home does not have to be a building. Now, as I read this article before, and I thought about this story and this idea, I reflected because these days we are currently in a state of quarantine or sheltering in place, sheltering at home. We are lucky. We have a home. I feel so blessed that I have this home and somewhere comfortable that I can be safe. Some places, some countries, it's not as easy to shelter in place or find a private area to be quarantined. So the idea about home, there's something deeper here that we can think about. Okay, the second question, why did Pedro and Maria move to her sister's home? I think this is the main event of this story. What happened to their home? Unfortunately, their home burned. Okay, if we see paragraph 2 and paragraph 3, the fire destroyed their home. We see a very important detail right here. I told you that I moved from California to Georgia. In California, wildfires are very, very common, especially in the summer and fall, very hot months of the year. And many, many, many people lose their homes every year. So this story also struck a chord with me. So we saw the answer at paragraph 2 and 3. Now, number 3, name 3 things that changed Pedro and Maria's life. So 3 events or 3 things that happened. Okay, pardon me. We just talked about one of them. They had a house fire. Okay, so that's one event. What about another one? If you check paragraph 1, we have another answer here. Louisa gave him a big surprise. She was pregnant with their 3rd child. Okay, big news. So it's another big event. Also, on the same day, I think, right? No, several days later, my mistake. We see that Pedro, at the very first part of the introduction, Pedro lost his job. How would you feel if you were in his shoes? So Pedro lost his job. They will have a 3rd child And then they lost their home. 3 big events. So our time flies so fast. So I'm going to pause here. And at the beginning of segment 3, let's continue discussing about this article and context clues, and then discussing vocabulary as a review. See you in a moment, or see you in a few minutes.